It's late May and the ground has dried out significantly. We've had a good spell of dry weather, then we've had a nice bit of rain, and now we're into that nice pulsing effect. So at this point, I want to switch all of the swales on site over from something that we've had them all winter, which is draining water from the site so it squelches less, to full infiltration and getting as much water into the ground as possible. This is good and firm now, it's not squelching. The trees, because the swale is effectively a tree growing system, the trees are starting to put on really nice growth. They're doing well, some of them are flowering, it's looking really well. The whole system's working, but at this point things could get a bit dry. So at this point, every scrap of water that drops onto the land, I want to keep right here. So at this point, we're not going to get too much water that's going to cause any sort of waterlogging or any squelching, because it's summer. We're just, every scrap of water we're going to use. So most swales are set to just infiltrate water as absolutely much as possible throughout the year. They use a lot in dry climates to stop overland flow and infiltrate that water into the ground so that you can grow trees. We're using them slightly differently on this landscape because obviously this is a relatively waterlogged landscape in winter. Even here, right at the top of the ridge, in winter, because it's a foot of topsoil over very dense solid clay, it does tend to get squelchy quite early in the autumn. So the more delicate trees we've planted on the swale berm. These are the fruit trees, and any tree basically grows far more aggressively on the swale berm. You know, everything that we've tried, it's dramatic, the difference. We're talking 2 or 3 times the growth in terms of biomass willow, and also far healthier trees and shrubs in terms of fruit and nut trees. So the way that we got ours set is just like any other swale for the summer, where all the water that would run overland tends not to happen here, but we do get a little bit of water build up in this swale in particular, because that barn across the way there, which isn't ours, it's our neighbour's barn, but all the water, of course, that comes off that ends up coming down our system. So we intercept that with that end of the swale, and it spreads that water evenly over this entire landscape, so we don't get waterlogging below the 100% runoff area of the barn roof. So it's really nice to have right here at the top of the site. Even though it's not our asset, it is our asset, if you see what I mean. We get the benefit of that water. So in winter, when we don't want things to be waterlogged, this is the difference. This is a monk, which typically is used for adjusting water height in ponds, but we fit them to the swale, so that in winter, when the water level's high, we set it like this. So that 90-degree pipe is set downwards. And this is in a pit that's slightly below the swale depth. So water can't build up in this swale at all. So even in winter, when we've had, you know, a 4, 5, 6 even inch rain event, and everything is saturated, these berms with the trees growing on, you know, the trees are happy as Larry. They're not waterlogged, they're not struggling, they're not, you know, in danger of drowning, because they're on a berm that is a good foot higher than the surrounding landscape. And because we've got this swale pit lower, of course, effectively draining this berm very effectively, we've got 2.5 foot of free draining topsoil for these trees to really do very well in. You know, they really enjoy those conditions. It's the healthiest, best tree growth we've got across the entire site. Swales work for tree growth. One of the few issues with them is that in a wet landscape, of course, they would cause excessive waterlogging, especially in winter. You know, it'd just be a swamp. This fixes that. So in summer now, obviously we don't want to lose any water. If we have a major rain event, I'd rather keep that water here on the berm, you know, within the berm, so it can soak in and it can push up more growth on the trees. And we've also got flowers and things growing along the berms. So at this point of year, we just adjust it as simply as that. And that's it. At this point, it would take a rain event so significant that it would fill this berm up to here. And that is tens of thousands of litres of water, a huge amount of water. It's not going to happen. So if we did have a major rain event, and you see we've had a decent bit of rain, you know, the pits are filled. You can see it does hold the water back. But if we did have a major rain event, it'd fill this, it'd saturate the berm. I mean, it'd take a spectacular storm to do this. It's never actually going to happen, especially up here at the top of the site. But if it did, the water would spill harmlessly down through the pipe and away and through the other systems, rather than building up, flowing over the top of the berm and, you know, causing erosion and issues there. So it's just not going to happen. So it's going to run through here, down, and into this pit. Now, here's another monk, because what happens is the water runs through, this is a fairly shallow pit, and it builds up in this area here. Now, as it's currently set, I've got this monk set down, So the water runs down through these couple of shallow ponds and fills this. This is currently the biggest pond on site. It's the Fig Pond. There's a whole series of videos about how we built this. It was very inexpensive, a very small digger, and 3 days, one person. Very simple and easy to do. But this fills, this has had the winter fill now, it's built up and up and up. There's a lot of water in there. And as I say, really, I don't want the water going into the ponds at this point. I want the water staying in the swale systems for growing trees. So I'm going to lift this swale up. In fact, that was actually trickling, because this is also, water will seep down into these ponds just because they're lower than the surrounding landscape. Water was actually trickling through that. I don't want that anymore. I want all of that water to back up. And these are really close in terms of height, but this is marginally lower. So water will flow down through there, should it happen, which it won't, you know, not at this time of year. And it runs out down in the next swale down. Now this swale also, actually, there's a little tiny trickle of water running through it. But again, so that water runs out of this black pipe here, you can just about make out. Now, it would normally, if we had a rain event, fill this pit, and instead of filling this swale, it would actually, instead of doing, you know, because that's a decent amount of water storage, instead of which it would just run through this pipe and down to the next swale down. I don't want that. So if I lift that, that means that this swale would fill completely. We're not going to lose any water. So that then would be running down to the next swale down, which is the last one in this current chain. So that comes out actually here somewhere. Where are we? No, here we are. I think I put canes into market. Yeah, there we are. There's the pipe. So it currently comes out here, okay? So here is where the next one is going to go in. This has been over a year. I still haven't done it. I'm going to at some point. But I've got the pipes ready to go, and that ties into a big hand-dug pond that's going in here, and has the same cascade effect down onto the next pond, the next swale down, which does actually have a system on that we need to adjust. So this is the last swale that needs adjusting. This isn't tied into the others yet, but it will be. So that last section that I showed that hasn't been completed yet, that will tie in the top 3 swale systems down into this, which is the willow production swale. It's a large gap between those swales compared to the others, because this is a large grazing area that's being kept open for a whole variety of purposes. But eventually it will spill down into this one as well. This one drains into, when we want it to in winter, drains into this pond here. This is the first swale and the first pond we dug on site. So all of these things will work, and this will eventually overspill to a whole series of earthworks that we've got planned probably in the next 2 years. It's going to have to be dug by hand, it's going to take time, and it's not the priority this season, but it will happen. So there's going to be even more within this chain all the way down, so that at a later stage we've got the capacity, when things are really full in winter and we've got a huge amount of water on site, we can be pumping water from the bottom of the site to the top of the site, passively using airlift pumps. So we can make sure that in winter, when we've got lots of water, everything's really full up and really brimming. So at the point the spring hits, and we might potentially hit a pretty significant drought some years, that will, you know, really make us as resilient to that drought as we possibly can be. Tree belts, tree crops creating shade and breaking down the wind, and also water going into the systems just passively like this being soaked in, are the most effective system, the most effective method that we can possibly use for being resilient to drought, and also, ironically, also for flood, because with major rain events we're still capturing as much of that, and we're dealing with it passively with systems that are designed to cope with it, rather than having masses of water running off site and taking topsoil with it. So this is the last adjustment I got to make this year. I'm really looking forward to being one more, hopefully by next winter. So this again, let's come off, there we go. This again, there we go, is exactly the same as the others. It just means that this being, especially the lowest of the swales that we've got, in the event of a major rain event, we've got a lot more land uphill of this. So it's got the capacity to take, have a lot more water hit it in the event of, say, a 3 or 4 inch major rain event during the middle of summer. this could actually fill. So it needs to have the capacity to take even more water than all the others. And the spillways and so on the ponds, that's a whole other subject, but they need to be correspondingly bigger as we come down the site. So all of these berms, all of these swales, they get bigger, deeper and stronger, more reinforced as we come further down the site, because they have the capacity to cope with more water. If you're in a system that's got a few hundred acres uphill that you could have overland flow off, you've got to design systems with massive berms and really strong reinforced spillways to deal with, you know, apocalyptic conditions, because there's coming, you know, major rain events, they're just becoming more and more the norm. These systems allow us to adjust our system, allow us to adjust the entire site according to what we're experiencing month to month, season to season, but also decade to decade. They're a part of the system that makes us more resilient for all sorts of fluctuations in climate and in terms of weather. Just adding a few pipes means that you can actually use systems like swales for the event of things like major drought in the future, without having to commit to infiltrate so much water you're going to turn into a swamp. Just simple adaptations like this to an old classic like a swale make a huge amount of difference. So now it's mid-September. See, you know, things are starting to wind down a little bit. We've had a fair bit of rain, so at this point, instead of having the water infiltrate, everything's had all the water it needs for the year. From this point on, things are only going to start getting more waterlogged. So really, we don't need to have the swales set for infiltration anymore. At this point, we're getting ready for winter. If we had a really unseasonal, really hot October, and, you know, the temperatures went through the roof, okay, you know, we could come out and we could adjust this again. It's that easy to do, but that's not going to happen. It's not going to be necessary. So all I do is twist that pipe down, and that's it. That is now a drainage swale rather than a water infiltration swale. So we'll do the next one down. And then the next swale down, you can see this actually has, I'm not going to step in it because I'm not wearing wellies, but this actually has water in the bottom of it. So again, we're going to lower this and adjust it ready for winter. So all that water that was in this swale is now draining away down to the next swale. And you get the idea. Adjustable swales. Really simple. Oh, something just flew in my ear. Really simple. I don't know why everyone doesn't use them.